And that is where we begin tonight. So, 2 changes for Port Adelaide. Josh Sinn comes in, Todd Marshall comes in, Ryan Burton has a calf, he didn't get up, he was withdrawn yesterday, couldn't get through training, and Jed McEntee has lost his place in the side for the Hawks. Jai Sarong replaces Frosty, who will take no further part in the remainder of the season. David King is alongside of me. What's your first thoughts, Kingy?
Oh, my first thoughts are that, they look tall. They look tall.
Oof.
Is that a way to beat the Hawks? I'm not exactly sure.
It didn't work last week for the Western Bulldogs.
Well, no one's been able to get the ball in there consistently enough to really challenge the Hawk back 6, and now they're going to be undersized without Frosty back there, and Frosty gets a lot of feedback. He's been a pretty good support crew down there for those back 6. I like Frosty's season. I just look at it and I think, is there ever going to be a day where you just need Charlie to stand up? And I had a look at his numbers. Surprised me he's only kicked 23 goals for the season.
Yep.
And most of those goals...
How many games?
17 games. It's
Yep.
a lot of games for just 23 goals. And most of his goals have come against the poorer teams. 4 against the Saints, 4 against the Tigers, 3 against the West Coast. So you just need something from him tonight. Now, he's it's unfair to say the results on him. It's not. But he's going to get a matchup he's going to enjoy tonight. And if you're going to win this game, if you're going to find, then you're going to need Georgiades, Dixon and Marshall to fire.
Yeah, so I'm looking at it going, that's at that end, and no doubt, and it's on the whole of the side to generate enough entries. Hawthorn very good at restricting those entries. We saw that last week. If there is one weakness, perhaps it is, as we've been told, that when they do concede a lot of entries, they are easier to score, but they're so good at restricting you. So can the midfield and Port Adelaide move the ball to give them a chance to score with 60-plus entries? It's got to probably be the number tonight. They probably need 60 entries to kick a big score. Like, this forward line is going to have that amount of entries.
They're not getting 60.
Well, they're not going to win with 40, I'm telling you.
Well, they might not win with 40, but I can tell you they're not getting 60.
Well, it needs to be high 50s, 60.
I don't reckon the Hawks would have given up 60 for
that's the point.
15 weeks.
That's the point.
Well, if that's the benchmark, they've got
the number's 50. I mean, and so it's got to be. And with this forward line, when you're looking at it, Georgiades, Dixon, Radaglia, I doubt whether he plays there. I've got no idea, but I think with how tall they are, he'll have to play back. Todd Marshall, who is coming in on no form, then you're going to have to give your forwards a chance with that. Rioli's probably the most dangerous of those forwards, but he gets Hardwick, so tough to get a kick on Blake Hardwick. That's that end. But then up the other end, I'm going, okay, so no Farrell, no Burton, no Houston, and you're coming up against a flock of small forwards that is absolutely flying with the way that they're playing. Bruce, Ginnivan, the Wizard Watson, McDonald, like they're all there. Dylan Moore, like, so how do you stop that?
Well, you can't defeat yourself as the first part of it, right? And I thought last week they were very aggressive, kicking the ball back through the corridor, and not their noted ball users. I didn't think Logan Evans, a young fella, made a few blues.
But they're not their noted ball users, are they?
I know. So do you have to change that corridor game plan? Do you have to say, we can't be taking these risks with guys that can't pay the bills, that can't hit those kicks? They have to play a bit safer to stay in the game, do you think?
Yeah, well, then I just think you play into their hands a little bit with the entries that I'm talking about. There needs to be some level of risk to generate fast entries, to give yourself one-on-one opportunities for the likes of Dixon. So that's the real challenge. The ball users, who is it? I'm telling you, it's not Lockie Jones.
Well, that's my point.
It's not Josh Sinn.
So why play that way?
Well, because if you've played that way all year, it's hard to... I mean, you can adjust, of course. You can adjust your game plan for the opposition, but I just think you don't want to... they'll end up kicking 40 points if they play that way.
I've got my eyes tonight on this midfield battle. I showed some vision on 360, not sure whether you saw it or not, but the amount of times that the opposition finish goal side of the Port mids is frightening. And the acid has to come on Horn-Francis, Butters, Rosie, Drew and Wines.
Yep.
And they have to get the job done defensively. Because if you don't, Hawthorn are brilliant out of the middle. And I marvel at John Newcomb and what he's becoming right before our eyes. I think he's become a top liner in the competition. Warple's had a really good year. Lloyd Meek's been the steal of probably the last 3 or 4 trade periods, really. Has there been a more impactful tall?
Not value wise,
No.
like for what they gave up for him, for what they would be paying him, I suspect. Being huge for them and really aggressive with the way that he goes. So yeah, big challenge for Jordan Sweet. So as we're talking, we cannot give Port Adelaide a chance. There's no way that you can give them a chance in this game now, unless something extraordinary happens and Hawthorn have an off night and Port Adelaide produce one. So then that begs the question: is how far can this Hawks team go?
Well, it's always tough to win on the road. So there's a big danger game tonight. Obviously,
You think it's a danger game?
They're playing in cutthroat finals from here on in, aren't they? Look, there's no easy way. It's a cracking contest, and we know that the last 11 teams in finals that are lost by 50+ points in that first week that have had the double chance of wrap back and won. 11 from 11. So they're going to be the 12th Port Adelaide. Can they do it? I think you've got to be reasonable. When they did get these injuries to the halfbacks, I think that Ken's hands were tied behind his back a little bit.
Yeah, so I don't think if anyone questions selection, okay, so you need to have a solution for that with you. So are you going to play, if you don't want to go this tall, you're going to play like Will Lorenz, who, to be fair, I don't know a whole lot about. Will Lorenz hasn't played before. So you're not going to, Vicentini is a ruckman. He's played a couple of games this year, played round 24 against Fremantle, played as a deep forward, but he's tall, he's a ruckman, so you're not going to play him. And Dylan Williams is your Josh Sin type, who just hasn't had the form line, so they just don't have a lot to pick from. So, yep, they may be tall, but they just don't have any other options, so they've just gone with their best 22. They'll put them in positions where they think they can be effective tonight.
So I'm not a fan of using Rosie as a halfback as such.
What about this week?
No, but I think you can use him as a defensive sweeping mid, getting back to help him. Look, a bit like what the Swans do. You know, they find a way to get it to their 2 or 3 playmakers through the middle of the ground. It always ends up with Warner or Gordon or Heaney. I think they've got to do more of that and keep the class involved in the game. I think that James Sicily's another one that I'm surprised to see. Like McEntee goes out of the team. Yeah. That's probably was going to be
role. Yeah, the Stewart role, which he's done before. So
got to do something about Sicily.
They'll have to do something with Sicily. There's no doubt about that, and we'll see whether Radaglia goes back and plays as a defender. All right, let's move on to the game on Saturday night. It's the Giants taking on Brisbane. NG Stadium in for the Giants, just the one. Bedford comes back from that calf injury. The run-with player goes straight to Lachie Neale. I would assume McMullen's been omitted. And for Brisbane, Payne has got up at this stage, so unchanged as it sits right now. That may change if Payne is a little bit, they're not confident with him prior to the bounce. But great game of footy, this one.
Rare that you're in a full knee brace on Tuesday and play on the Saturday. I think Darren Joyce will play. You just can't take the risk. You want him there next week and the week after if you are to progress. Had a look at the previous meeting between these two. I think it was round 22 or round 21, and the Brisbane flew early. They were all over them early. Should have had a monster lead, but they were inaccurate, has been their lot for the year. And I'll tell you who the problem for them was Hugh McCluggage.
Right.
He's just doing what he does, just being able to get forward. Zorko is always a problem for them. You'd think they'd have to look at maybe a run with Zorko. We know that Bedford's come back in to go to Neale. Do they put someone to Zorko? Do they team tag?
With Zorko, what I probably would do is try and get a more of an offensive player. Like a Brent Daniels v Zorko would be a matchup that I would really like for a Giants point of view, because he's really disciplined enough.
That's what it was last time.
Yeah, to hold his position, not get sucked up the ground, not allow Zorko to drop back, but then he'll make you pay. Like Zorko doesn't have a defensive bone in his body. He's not there to defend a Brent Daniels or a Darcy Jones, your man. So I think if it's either of those two, you could look at that. O'Halloran, whether he's the sub or not, has played that role on Tom Stewart before, so he's another option as well. This
was the last quarter of Darcy. Do you remember he kicked those 2 goals?
Yes.
This was this game.
That game.
It was against Shadow Brain, I think. I look at the Lions line up and I think, gee, that's just stacked. Isn't it?
It is. You can't look at it any other way.
No. And you think magnet for magnet, they win. And then I look at the Giants lineup and I think their ability to put the opposition under enormous pressure is their feature, is probably their strength area at the moment. There's not a lot else. I mean, last week they were unbelievable clearance and contest against the Swans for 3 quarters and just punctured. They just stopped. It was quite alarming how obvious it was to see them stop running.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
can't be fitness.
they may just been gassed with the way that they were just so brutal for 3 quarters. Their defence is rock solid though, so that's they're so organised behind the ball. Taylor and Buckley are enormous, so that Brisbane will get the opportunity. They may get the 60 entries, but the Giants defend entries really well, and we even saw that, I thought, at stages against Sydney when they were storming. So going to be tough for the likes of Joe and Eric, who is just in awful form, to be completely honest. Eric Hipwood, I think he's their weakest link. But they do have enough on the ground. They
don't like Eric.
Oh, I just don't. I just don't.
I
just can't. I just can't cop some of the stuff he does. I can't, particularly.
I love Loman. I love Logan Morris.
Yeah, but can you trust Logan Morris?
Yeah. I think he's going to be.
He will be in time, but
yeah, no, I think he's a better product than Hipwood. To me, this is the Toby Green game. If Toby fires, they win. If he's just this Toby that we've seen the last few weeks, then I think the Lions may get them. They just need someone else other than Jesse to stand up forward. So Cadman's been really good in fits and starts.
Yeah, he's arrived.
But they need Toby Green this week.
All right, it is Kingy. Well, you're going to start. You're going to kick us off like you always do. Who's in the gun?
I'm putting Stephen Canelio in the gun this week after watching him.
Cogs is in the gun.
Well, I know he's injured. I know he's got a complaint that's going to require probably off-season surgery, but I've watched him the last 3 weeks. He's having no impact because he's avoiding contact. Now, I think they've got to make a decision. You're either going to play and fight through this and push through, and I know it's difficult, and I know that he'll be getting some sort of assistance in terms of a jab into his shoulder and all those sorts of things, but he has to put his body on the line now. We're at that stage of the season where there's no other option. If he's going to play no contact footy, he can't play.
Toughen up?
No, not toughen up, because I think.
Would you say
Marshall will ring you in 10 minutes.
Would you say he needs to grit his teeth?
I'm thinking make the right call. Either play and embrace what comes with that, or don't play. The coach may have to make that call.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with you on that one. And that was for Grays.com, Australia's leading online marketplace. Well, I think it's just a huge night for the Brisbane Lions. I do. And when's Charlie Cameron just going to rip a game apart again?
Oh, Charlie.
When's you're just Googling his numbers if you can for me. Like the last time Charlie Cameron has ripped a game to shreds, like 3-4 plus, pressure, excitement. I see flashes, and he's one of the most watchable players in football. I love watching him play. I think he's so important. But when's he ripped a game? When's he ripped one?
Question. So if you look at it against the best side, so trim the fat a little bit. So he kicked 2 against Carlton, he kicked 3 against the Bombers. But we're sort of more looking at, so GWS last time he kicked the 1.
Yep.
1 against Sydney. Yeah. 2 against Port Adelaide.
It's your 1s and your 2s this year. Oh, I want him to... And it's not even... We're not just going to judge it on goals, but I just cannot remember the last time you've gone, he was the difference for Brisbane on this game, and he's good enough to be the difference. I'm looking at a matchup that he's going to love. I'm not sure who it is. Maybe it's Iden. Yeah. Maybe it's a Perryman type, someone that he's just going to destroy really for athleticism. So that's who I've got in the gun. I'd love to see it. I think he's really important, an infectious player. There's heaps of the small forwards that they've got.
Pass mark? What's a pass mark?
Yeah, well, I'd love to see him kick 3 and have a really influential game. Like 3 in a final is a big result. I mean, if Nick Watson kicked 4 in his first final, why can't Charlie Cameron kick 4? Like, why is that not a possibility? I think we've let him off the hook a little bit this year with his form, and maybe there's been some distractions. He had the teeth issue in the pre-season, we know that. So, but now we're in September. It's where the big boys come to earn their money. He gets paid well, and I think he's got to play really well and influence the game tonight. Grays.com, Australia's leading online auction marketplace. It's easy to buy and sell with Grays. We're joined by the Massai live in the studio.
I sprung him last night having a couple. He was at
Did
the
you?
Yes, he was in the Hilton.
Just having
Hotel for you.
Perfect preparation last night.
Perfect. Welcome, Mitch.
Thanks for having me in, guys.
How are you, mate?
What's happening? We'll get to the footy of the teams still alive, but of course all the interest is the teams that are out, I think. What's happening at the Blues?
Yeah, so they've got their big round of exit meetings today, so a couple of days of meetings. The big watch today is on Matt Owies and Charlie Curnow. So Curnow will decide and learn today whether he goes for that ankle surgery, which may impact the start of his pre-season. And Matt Owies has kicked the 3rd most goals at the Blues this year, and Still no contract offer, so we'll see what develops today. But
So who's driving that? The always one I can't wrap my head around. I would have thought he's the best of the Blues small forwards. They need another couple, you would think. Is he driving that, or is the club?
It's more the club from where I sit.
Right.
So I think he's keen to stick around, but I think he's now getting his head around the potential of leaving and looking at a few other options. Matt Owies.
Why is that though? What's the sticking point there? It surely can't be on-field performance.
You go to other clubs and you ask why, and they get the sense that are the Blues working on something else. So is it to open up money for Houston? At the start of the year, they didn't come hard because of the Hayward situation. There's just a few balls in the air around the Blues at the moment. I think in an ideal world they'll keep him, but they're just working through a few contract decisions on other blokes.
Hey, I liked your comments on during the week on Talking Footy about Jake Stringer and the conversations you'd had with other clubs. Just give us a bit more detail, and for those that missed it.
Yeah, so it's a lot of it centres around Jake Stringer when he doesn't have the ball. So his running patterns, how hard does he chase when the Bombers aren't in possession? I know you guys follow it as close as anyone, but that's the concern from the club. So he's got the 1-year deal to stay at Essendon right now. His management is going to market to see if they can secure a 2-year deal elsewhere. Now, there's still a lot to play out on this one because clubs are still in finals. Clubs need to work out where their priorities lie. They're confident they can find a 2-year deal elsewhere, but that is yet to be forthcoming. And speaking to other clubs trying to gauge where Jake Stringer sits in the market, they say, well, you look at behind the goals vision, he's not the hardest chaser. In the modern game when his halfback will set up 3 goals the other way, and he might kick 2. That hurts you in modern day footy.
I wonder whether like the Hawthorn, the way that they all buy in defensively, what the Giants do with their small forwards, Brent Daniels. I know you're probably going to say, well, Dustin Martin never chased, and these Christian Petrarch probably not a great chaser. These match winners don't chase, but I wonder whether the Hawthorn model has affected the way other clubs are thinking.
Just reckon clubs pick these sort of fights every now and then with particular players. No one else, just that player. Surely this is a club-wide ethos that needs to change. It's not just Jake.
But you've got to start somewhere.
Well, it's a bad spot to start, if you ask me.
You think?
I think if you take Jake Stringer out of that forward line, it will expose what is actually there.
But you can't start with Sardis. You can't start with a young player. You got to make a statement with a big dog if you want to make a statement.
Yeah,
he may be the big dog to start with.
Yeah, hey, get him out of the joint then, and what's there next year. Let's just see how impotent their forward line actually is without him down there.
The Bombers are happy to facilitate a trade for Jake Stringer if there's a 2-year deal out there, but they're also happy for him to stay on the 1-year deal that he signed originally, and then he hit the trigger this year, so he's triggered that for 2025. The other one is Peter Wright now.
Before you leave him, right?
Yeah.
So how many clubs would be on the phone for Jake now?
It's not overwhelming.
Not overwhelming.
Nah,
One or two.
Oh, if that, yeah.
If that.
Yeah.
So it's a big risk from him to make a statement when you don't have, people banging down the door to sign you, isn't it?
But he's also got the 1-year deal he can fall back on at the Bombers.
He's contracted, isn't he?
Yeah.
So if he gets 2, this is my point, right? So if he got 2 at a club like Sydney would say, well, this is how we do it. Come and do it our way. And you'll find he will do those things that he's been questioned on. And they'll scoop the pool. Or a Collingwood, and they'll scoop the pool. Surely you just address the issues rather than purge the player.
Yeah, I see it a little bit differently. I think it's not a bad player to make a statement with. He may have 1 or 2 years left. Brad is trying to make a statement with someone. You can't do it with Archie Perkins, so let's do it with a name. And if he wants to leave, and Jake, if I was Jake, I'll just back myself in. I'll go and kick 50 next year, and then I will. Then I'll
financial security. But you just keep saying
leaving
this, right?
for 1 year to go to a third club. How many opportunities has Jake Stringer had to maximise the talent that he's got? I mean,
It's a business,
he's been
mate.
around forever.
It's a business, and where else are you going to go and earn $800,000 a year post footy? If it doesn't work for him next year at Essendon, he's out.
I get that, but if he does dig, he will earn $800,000 a year after he fulfills
1 year.
After he fulfills the contract that he has initially signed, that he was happy to sign. He was happy to put that trigger in. He's hit that.
Yeah.
So just fulfil your contract.
He's already fulfilled the contract. That's not the discussion. He could go to Collingwood for a 2-year deal rather than stay for 1.
He's hit the trigger that he was happy to sign. He's put that trigger in for a reason.
Yeah, but this
is
is a business, mate. You got 2 years of the same earning capacity. He might get 2 years at $750 at say Collingwood.
Oh,
600, 700. What would he get?
500.
500.
But it's
all.
also-
yeah.
it's
Just want to make clear, Collingwood's not that keen.
Okay, all right.
Right.
But it's a business for the Bombers as well. It sort of works both ways. Like they need a play. They can't make it with Darcy Parish because they ridiculously signed him for 6 years. They can't do it with Ridley because they gave him 3 years on top of 3 that he already had. They can't do that. They've already made those mistakes. This may be the only lever they've got to pull to make a statement.
Yeah, I just be careful what you wish for
All right,
with this.
Yep. 1300 736 736. Bombers fans, if you want to have your say on that.
Peter Wright, so he
Yeah.
got dropped late in the year, 3 years left on his contract. He signed it at a good time off the back of that best and fairest, copped the shoulder, and he found his way out of the side from Brad Scott's best 22 late in the year. He's met with the Bombers. There's been a few phone calls, I think, but he's met with the Bombers in the last few days. He's assured them he wants to stay, and Brad Scott has assured him that we won't be trading you. So he's staying. But that is an interesting watch over the pre-season as to if he can find his way back into their best team.
Yeah, well, this is my point. You get rid of Stringer, and Peter Wright's going to have to be what he was 2 years ago. And he's not that player right now.
Maybe they
Who's going to kick all their goals?
Well, maybe they
Caddy's
like
gonna have to kick
Langford.
100.
Maybe they like Jones. Maybe they're looking at something in the
he finished
trade
on a
period.
wing.
I know that, but he's a goal kicker. He's
Not much of a goal kicker if he's playing on the wing.
But Jake Stringer's not going to be there for the next premiership. Let me tell you that. So if they want to make a statement, they need to make a statement with someone. And as I said, you can't do it with Elijah Sardis or Nick Cox. It's not going to happen. What else is on your radar? North Melbourne. We're scratching our head in the ad break thinking, what are they doing, North?
Well, it's a bit of a salary dump because he's got... You're talking about Jack Darling?
Yeah.
So he's got 1 year left on a pretty good wage at West Coast. He's so close to the 300-game mark. The Eagles are driving this as much as anyone,
So
which is my
why are
read.
North looking to solve an Eagles problem here?
Well, they can take on... They've got the salary cap room to do
know,
it
but
at
does
North
he make
Melbourne.
them better?
And Clarko's been big on trying to find experience and a key position player that can be the foil for Nick Larkey and allow Charlie Comben to either play at either end. So is Jack Darling the best option out there at that age and can provide experience, trains the house down? They say he's an incredible professional. That could be the best of the options out there.
Game had moved past him 3 years ago. So this is what I don't get. So we had this discussion on Sports Day last night. Someone like a Jake Riccardi, right?
Yep.
Like who can genuinely play at the level. Why wouldn't North go, okay, there's a 22, 23-year-old out of favour at the Giants. Let's just go all there, right? Before we go to Jack, let's exhaust all those types of options. Or is it not that simple?
I think it's simple enough that you could throw the kitchen sink at someone like Jake Riccardi, and he's not playing this weekend for the Giants. They've had a couple of chances to go after Jake Riccardi, North Melbourne, and they haven't thrown the kitchen sink at it. Yeah, I'm with you. Callum Brown at the Giants was in at the
there's
start of
another
the year,
one.
and
He's kicking goals at the start of the year.
yeah, it is a head scratcher. I think Clarko's been big on looking for the professional as well. And I'm not saying Jake Riccardi's not a professional, but he's that leader, Jack Darling.
Yeah.
He's the guy that they can look to in the locker room.
I don't think they're necessarily looking for absolute on-field performance being the only parameter. They need to learn how to train, how to prepare, and that sounds a silly thing to say.
It does.
At this stage.
It does at this stage with where they are at with Clarko coaching them. Mac Andrew, I'm not as offended by this deal as some people thought I would be. I just think they've put some protections in there for him. Like if it's a 5-year deal essentially. If there's some concussion issues and he's not playing, they've protected him there. And if he is playing, well, he's going to be 25, 26 in the prime of his career, and you'd be happy to sign him for another 4. So, is this maybe the new way clubs protect themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I like it. And they're similar to the Josh Kelly deal a few years ago at the Giants, where they've got the option in it. This is, you pay what the market demands. So if Gold Coast didn't stump up here, there was clubs like Hawthorn and Melbourne, where he's an academy player at the Demons, ready to throw the kitchen sink at this guy. Clubs love to target a big fish, and clubs have never had more salary cap room. With the CBA going up, a lot of players don't get the full CBA uplift in their contracts. So clubs have got mountains of cash to spend. Look at Hawthorn right now. They've got Barris, Battle, and they still think they've got room to potentially get Perryman, who I think is more likely to join Port Adelaide. But clubs are so flush with cash right now that they can do these deals. And Mac Andrew coming out of contract in 12 months' time, it's smart business by Gold Coast to get ahead of that, even though they might be paying a little bit overs right now. In 3 or 4 years' time, it's going to look like an average good player wage.
So who gets squeezed out there? Like Lukosius is the obvious one.
Yeah.
Where does he land?
I think more likely to come here to South Australia.
More likely to leave than stay.
Yeah, at this stage.
Yeah.
I think everyone is getting their head around that one.
Getting smashed online here, boys, on the old temper text. Not happy with my Stringer comments.
You're not alone though. You're not alone in those comments.
Oh, it feels like I am.
He's still
There's
kicked
not a lot of
42 goals
shared
this year.
love.
No, of course. No, there's a lot of people that are with you and saying.
I'm just looking forward to seeing their forward line without him. I'm a Stringer fan. I like guys that can change the game. And he can go on ball and do some things. But
Is it a concern that he lost a lot of his power in the last 6 weeks? So I watched him closely at training. His first 6 weeks this year, we were talking about All-Australian contention. He'd changed a lot of his off-field. He was in a fantastic spot. And then you're looking at the last 6 weeks of the season, he lost that explosive power. He wasn't impacting games, and he was going missing in big moments.
And I understand the counter argument that you want to go past him, you want to make set different standards at a footy club, and he's always the starting point. It's going to be interesting.
Mitch, I want to ask you a question about Chris Scott and whether or not he's not a Geelong coach for life, is he? Like he's I would think he's a career coach for life, whether that is at Geelong, and at some point I would think the runway is going to end there. When's a club going to make a gigantic play? Like, I don't know if it's Tassie, it may be Tassie. But when is, say for the Adelaide Footy Club, right? Go to Chris Scott right now. He's out of contract, one or two more?
Yeah, he's
Port Adelaide or Adelaide?
Well, either or.
He's on for 26.
Either or. But if you Port Adelaide or West Coast right now, why wouldn't you? What's the worst that can happen by making the biggest crack at a coach that the club has ever made? And I think Adelaide and West Coast, just because of the resources that they have, and the size of the club. I think Chris Scott's wife might be from Adelaide. There may be a connection there. Will that ever happen? Because what's the worst case scenario?
You just have to pay a bit over the soft cap, which I'm surprised more clubs don't do with the resources like a West Coast have got. You can pay over the soft cap and you go dollar for dollar once you get over there.
What
but
I'm
just
trying
cop
to
it.
say, is he gettable? Is he ever going to be gettable?
I think in time, yeah. It felt like a couple of years ago, before they won that 2022 flag, that it was the end was coming at Geelong. And Steve Hocking comes in. Chris Scott fell in love even more with the place again. Not saying he was looking for a way out, but it felt like there was a natural end coming. And then he goes to the playing group, Joel Selwood, Tom Hawkins, and they convince him to go again. And he's a premiership coach for a second time and could be for a third time this year. The Tassie one makes a lot of sense, but I'm with you. Look at the soft cap, the way it works right now. 20% of every coach's wage sits outside the cap. So if you went and offered a coach $2 million, there's $400,000 that's going to sit outside the soft cap. And you might have to go a little bit over the tax bracket, but you just pay it, don't you? With a club like West Coast or Adelaide that can just have the resources to do it.
It's probably happened like with the Ross Lyon Freo one was the one that we all remember. But even even what Sam Mitchell's building at Hawthorn, like he's out of contract at the end of next year. Has a club gone to Sam Mitchell and gone, you know what? Let's get him. And I know people say, well, he's a Hawthorn player. Of course he wants to finish what he started at Hawthorn. It's unlikely, but you don't know unless you have a crack.
Yep.
Not that many good coaches out there right now.
Give us your top three that you'd go after. So,
well, Chris Scott is one. Longmire's two.
McRae would be in there for me.
Yeah, I would have Longmire and Scott ahead of Craig McRae. I can understand your point with Craig McRae, but I would have Sam Mitchell right there. Like 41 years of age, clearly what he's done. Out of contract also at the end of next year. Haven't seen a contract extension yet from Hawthorn. Go and offer him $2 million if you're West Coast to go and coach this club. I don't know. I just think clubs can be a little bit more aggressive. Injuries in finals, always heartbreaking stories. We've seen that with Callum Mills. What are they saying, the Swans? No chance to play in the grand final, would he be?
Well, they're saying low grade, but with his history this year, and he hasn't been at 100% all year after the back of that shoulder. He had the calf at one stage. It'll be 18 days from day of injury to grand final.
Day of injury was what? Tuesday, was it?
Yeah.
That's a strange way to pull a hammy in a light run on a Tuesday after a Saturday game.
Yeah, with a week off as well. So they wouldn't have ramped it up.
You never catch up there. You miss pre-season,
exactly.
A block of pre-season, you just never catch up.
You want to muck around on Mad Monday and do tackles and pop your shoulder out and not have any pre-season and any training. That's what happens.
That's exactly right.
That's what happens.
Well, the irony in this one is it's almost the same story as last year when Taylor Adams hurt his hammy in that session at Olympic Park in the lead up to the grand final for Collingwood. Now he's the man that could replace Callum Mills.
Yeah.
Do you play a bloke off an 18-day hammy with the history they've got? They made the Sam Reid call a couple of years ago and that backfired badly.
So Fox's record on Cameron is good from memory as well. So if it's Geelong in the grand final,
he played well in the grand final. Robbie
Fox may be the matchup for Jeremy Cameron, replaces Callum Mills, and as heartbreaking it is, the captain of the footy club, for goodness sake. Like, it's not an easy call that they're going to have to make.
The Max Holmes situation is the template. It doesn't matter whether they prove their fitness. In the end, the coach is not prepared to take that risk.
And we see the mature clubs do that. John Longmire is just that. So, which brings us to Tom Stewart. Has he recovered from that illness yet?
He's recovered from the illness. He was never playing from the hamstring. We learned that in the postscript. He was running at about 80% during the week. The fact he wasn't at the game says there was some form of illness, but...
When did you get onto this, Mitch? You broke the story about 2.5 hours before, or maybe 3 hours before the game.
Yeah, it was doing the rounds at about 9 a.m. on the morning.
Oh, was it?
But on the day of the game, for me, you want to be close to shore before you report it. So
was there a moment where you released that information? You thought, I hope
Yeah, you're always concerned because
even when you know it's true.
Because you're thinking, is a club throwing red herrings out? Because how much of the port prep that day was built around Tom Stewart with Jed McEntee and how much
he jumped on the plane, didn't he?
Yeah.
Just for that reason, for Port Adelaide.
Well, he actually flew over the day before because Steve Saunders...
on the Friday.
Steve Saunders, the Geelong medico, is based in Adelaide,
yeah.
and a lot of the Cats boys come over for extra treatment the day before when they play here, and even Dangerfield's been known in the week of a game in Melbourne will fly back and forth from Adelaide for treatment with Steve. That's how highly regarded he is. I think Stewart plays. He was training at 80% during the week. The questions are around Hawkins and Guthrie. How much do you look into those guys? They don't have another game now. The Cats VFL side's out, so they're going to have a big match committee in a week's time to see what they do for that prelim.
They're really confident, Geelong, aren't they, of where they can get to? I mean, you're close to the Cats. They think they can win this thing, clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. And why not? They've got so many players playing above their contract. I'm big on the fact that they did it in 22 with guys like Stengel, who was bargain basement, Zach Guthrie, Jed Buse, Reece Stanley had a good grand final set up. So many of their guys, Lawson Humphries, Sean Manor, are playing on 140, 150 grand, and they're playing like $600,000, $700,000 players.
So, stay on the Cats. They're going to get Bailey Smith. After they won the premiership, they got Bruin, Henry, Bose, and pick 7.
Yeah. And Jai Clark can't get in
the
right
AFL, like, this is not a criticism one bit, clearly, of Geelong. I just marvel at what they're able to do. But is the AFL going, this is not fair in a competition that we want to be fair? Like, you're going to get Bailey Smith for a pick in the late teens, probably.
And they might need to pony up with a little bit more.
He's 23, he's in his prime, and he walks into a team that is once again in the bottom 4. They may win the thing again after the 3 21-year-olds that they bought in and pick 7 after the last time they won it.
What can they do, the AFL? Do they slap them with another trade ban like the Swans?
I don't know what they can do, but
you haven't got a problem with that, though, have you?
No, I love it. I just love it. I'm jealous of it. Jealous of it. But in a competition that their whole thing is about the integrity of it, keeping it even. Geelong have had so much success. 13 prelims in 18 years. Won it in 22. 3 21-year-olds join them, first-round draft picks, plus pick 7. And then you get Bailey Smith, who everyone wants, at the age of 23 in his prime, after they may win another flag. That's amazing.
It is.
What do other clubs say about this?
They scratch their heads. But you look back 15 years ago, Geelong couldn't attract anyone down there 20 years ago. And now it's the place to be.
So that's the challenge for the Saints and people like that, isn't it?
Look at Melbourne. Players don't like going to Casey right now. They've got to fix that. There's no movement on Caulfield yet. It's still going to be 3 or 4 years until they build that joint. Christian Petrarca might never play and train at a facility other than Casey in his career at Melbourne. It still hasn't moved. These are big issues for clubs. Dingley's only 20 minutes from Elwood and Caulfield. And Hawthorn are about to walk into a multi-million-dollar facility there. What a selling point for Josh Battle.
Why wouldn't you want to go to Geelong, though?
No, I agree.
It's an easy sell, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, players don't they, less money to go there, Mitch?
They do.
Yeah.
And that's a rich area of footy talent. Players will go back there and take a little less.
Good on them.
Have you got a wild card player in the trade period for us? Someone that
we won't hold you to it. We won't hold you to it. We're not going to say Mitch got this wrong or anything. Just a watch.
Something out there just left of centre, and we'll just park that and just hold on to that.
I'm still not putting a line through Petrarca.
Wow.
There we go. Hello.
Still 6 weeks to go. 4 weeks, 5 weeks.
I think we need to keep Mitch in longer when he comes in.
I love it. He's a busy man. He gets
up.
requests left, right, and centre, and he does it out of the goodness of his heart, which we love. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll see you at the game tonight. Channel 7's chief footy reporter. You can watch him on 7 live from the Adelaide Oval tonight, I'm sure. So I want to put this on the agenda. Chris Fagan is reportedly about to extend his contract beyond next season. So he's already got next year. Going to tip in for another year until the end of 2026. Is that the right move for Brisbane to do that now? Or would you rather them, and you've been strong on this, would you rather wait to the end of the final series to see how it plays out?
Well, everything that comes out of Brisbane says they're wrapped with what he's done and what he's doing. So you can understand them just rolling on, being happy with the man they've got. I think they'll make a fair bit of change to their coaching setup at the end of the season. Not necessarily Chris, obviously, but around him.
Would you wait, is the question.
Would I wait?
He's already got next.
I would. I don't mind coaches coming out of contract. I don't see the massive downside. No one's going to, you wouldn't think, swoop in and steal Chris Fagan off you. So I would have waited, but this is
to play devil's advocate. Terrific record, home and away, grand final kick away last year. Clearly, players are happy with him and stick around. and he's got them in a position to compete in the last 6 again this year, and they're going, well, we're pretty happy. It's only another year.
Yep.
I can see why they would extend him.
Yeah, I can understand that. And then in the same breath, people will say, well, Simon Goodwin should have won 2 flags with this group. Luke Beveridge should have won a flag with this group, this list. So it's the same conversation with Brisbane. Look, go back and have a look at this list for a 5-year window.
It's a good list.
But
they're hard to win.
Yeah, of course they are.
Yep.
But that's what we judge, isn't it? Don't we sit here and say, are you the reason? Tactically, are you helping us be the reason we win big finals, or is it an impediment? I'm happy to be on the other side of the fence on this one, and it's not a popular discussion to have. And he's a great fella. He's a good football person, Chris Fagan. But let's just talk about the job, and this is why they get $20,000 a week. For this sort of discussion about their role.
The question is, what's the rush to sign him now?
Yeah,
really,
I don't understand the rush.
I don't know if there is a rush. I don't know if there is a rush as much as you can make the case for it. But the discussion to have that maybe in January, February would be the way to go. But we'll see how that plays out. Anything on your agenda?
Well, this weekend's a big weekend for the coaches we're talking about. So you've sat on you've sort of said round 1 next year will be Josh Carr 2 or 3 times.
Yeah,
4 or 5 weeks ago, and then you sort of weaned yourself off that in the last couple.
No, I didn't.
Yes,
I've been very consistent that Port
haven't.
Adelaide probably needed to make a grand final for Ken to survive. I've been consistent on that from probably January this year to now.
I've only heard you say that in the last 2 weeks.
You have not heard. I've heard. I'll go and pluck that out.
All right. That's your job for you for next week, to find that audio.
He's probably going to have to make a grand final to survive, and I've said that.
Find me that audio. No, you haven't said that for.
I've said that. I reckon I would have said that in February.
Okay.
I would have written it. Would have said it somewhere. Would have tweeted it.
I look forward to hearing it again.
So what's your
Friday.
question? What's on your agenda?
I don't think there's been a better parting of company from a coach than Adam Simpson from the West Coast Eagles. The way that was handled at the end. If you are Chris Davies,
it's never good to sack a coach mid-year.
Never good to sack a coach at any time. It's always ugly at the end. But for some reason, West Coast were able to do it in a painless way and respectfully. Yeah. If it weren't to go Port Adelaide's way tonight, how should it play out in the next week to 2 weeks?
I think a mature conversation between the club and Kenny will be on the cards. I mean, that would happen weekly, let's be clear. And they'll need to decide whether they can both be on the same page as to whether he is the right man to carry them forward beyond next year and further than that, or whether they clearly have earmarked Josh Carr, which is slightly awkward, I think, for Ken, and Ken's handled it amazingly well, as has Josh.
Yeah.
But it is a bit of an elephant in the room, isn't it? So if it doesn't go well tonight, I would think a mutual decision between both. He's got to get his check, and he's got to get paid out clearly because he deserves that. So that I think that's what will happen. I do.
Yeah. Okay. So at the end of the day, you don't think he'll be as
not if it goes ugly tonight.
What if he loses by 1 point tonight?
Well, then it makes it a little bit more complicated. But still, I probably stand by that. And this is as much as I've got as much admiration for the guy as anyone in football. So I just want to put that on the agenda. But there comes a time when it's not a healthy situation for him to be in. And I don't think it's healthy for his mental health, for the footy club, for the fans, and it's probably coming to that point. But they got plenty of time to do that in the off season because it's not as if they have to find a new coach. They've already earmarked the guy that they want to coach the footy club.